Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy, Gsluke, here with a Monday Night Football preview for tonight's matchup between the Raiders and the Lions. Gonna go through what to expect for the DFS side, how I'm attacking my large field GPPs tonight, and then towards the end, we'll go through two props over on Underdog Fantasy and for Prize Picks that I'll be getting exposure to tonight. So a lot to talk about with the single game sample. Let's go ahead and hop right on in. There's really only one major injury to keep an eye on, and it's up top. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, who as of last night is questionable with an illness, and a few people have speculated that it's some sort of flu-like symptoms that Amon-Ra is dealing with, and if he ends up getting ruled out, would completely change the dynamic of the slate. But based on some of the other people with flu-like symptoms that we've seen play this year, he likely still suits up. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That is something to point out, but what we want to focus on here, and our main focus for the next 3 or 5 minutes, is going to be on the script side of things, where everyone and anyone is going to be playing Lions onslaughts. I'm talking 4-2 Lions heavy lineups, maybe even 5-1 full-on stacking the Lions side is going to be a very popular sentiment tonight. We've got a 7.5 point spread. We've got, the home team as the favored team, a Lions team that is first off endeared by a lot of the football community, but also has a lot of positive momentum going for them. Unfortunately, they are without David Montgomery tonight, so no real injury designation there, but he's already been rolled out. And on top of that, might be without Amon-Ra, or might be a little bit limited with their number one wide receiver. So I think there's a little bit more to the Raiders side than there's the public is at least giving them credit for. And I do think that there's a lot more question marks over there for the Detroit Lions than a lot of people are thinking about as well. First off, the absence of David Montgomery is going to have an impact on their rushing game, which might make them a little bit more pass heavy, right? Jared Goff might throw it for 35, 40 plus times, like we saw at times last year where they were a little bit ineffective, right? Their defense was on the field a lot more often when they were in that sort of game script, and they lost some ugly games last year when they had to rely on that passing offense. So not only do I think that David Montgomery's absence is going to impact, the play calling, but I think it's going to have a trickle-down effect on the entire team. And when you have the Amon-Ra situation on top of that to deal with, it might be a lot of bad news for the Detroit Lions. So if you couldn't guess, I'm going to be on that Raiders side for tonight, and I'm going to have a lot of 3-3 lineups where I'm taking, 3 players from both teams, keeping it relatively balanced, but I will be mixing in some 4-2 lineups for the Raiders. Probably not any 5-1s, not going with the full onslaught, but yes, some 4-2 Raider stacks are sure to be a little bit contrarian. So just a few ownership marks to point out, right? Jared Goff is chalky as you would expect. Amon-Ra, I've got it right around 59% right now, which if he ends up getting rolled in, that would go way up with people not worrying about the illness. Jahmyr Gibbs is, as of right now, the highest owned player on the slate at nearly 67%, whereas Davante Adams, 48%, right? Garoppolo, 41%. That's an exceptionally low ownership number on a quarterback. But even Josh Jacobs, he's $8,400. That is way too cheap for Josh Jacobs, 46% owned, right? Jacoby Myers, maybe a little bit more of a fair price tag, 44% owned. All of the players on the Raiders, you're not only getting at a lower price tag, kind of similar to the Vikings, right, when they won a few weeks ago, you're getting them at a lower price and a better ownership number. And this is the NFL where crazy stuff happens, right? The 49ers are on a losing skid right now. I don't think a lot of people saw that happening. Take the underdogs. Take the chance on a team like the Raiders that not only is criminally underrated, in my opinion. They played the Steelers and they almost beat us with one of our better performances on offense and defense. And on top of that, you've got a Lions team that's hurting a little bit, right? That has 2 major question marks on the offensive side of the ball. So tonight, I'm taking the game theory approach, and I'm playing a lot of these Raiders players, right? A Josh Jacobs at captain, right? Hoping that he's getting the volume that he's looking for. Maybe it's even going Davante Adams at captain, right? When we compare the captain ownership over here, just 11.6% compared to nearly 16% for Amon-Ra. If Amon-Ra is rolled in, right, he'll be nearly 18, maybe 20% owned at captain, which is going to lower Adams' ownership at captain. it's going to make him an even better leverage play in comparison to some of the guys on the Lions. So if you're in a large field GPP, right, I would recommend taking more of that game theory approach. If you're in cash, you're in a single entry, and you really like the Lions tonight, you think that the injuries aren't going to cause them any sort of issues, right, then play them, right? That's perfectly fine in those kind of formats. But if you are somebody that's buying the Lions narrative tonight, I would just stay away from the GPPs, right? There's no reason to play in a contest where your narrative is going to be super chalky. And when you're trying to take first place, right, it's a different kind of mindset than when you're in a smaller field GPP, where first place isn't as much of a goal, right? Like, you still want to cash out. Finishing first would be great in a single entry, that kind of contest, but you're just looking to grind out ROI there. In the large field GPPs, it's first or go home, right? You're trying to take home that prize that is like 25-30% to first place. In large field GPPs, if you're on the Lions tonight, just avoid them. There's no reason to play that chalky game script there, right? Take that chalky kind of lineup, that chalky kind of lineup construction, and throw it in a contest that is more suitable for your kind of exposure. If you're feeling ballsy like me tonight, right, if you're playing the Raiders, the large field GPPs are perfect for that kind of player. So just know that your exposure tonight, right, when it comes to contest and the kind of script that you're going for, should probably go hand in hand. That would be my main advice to you. In terms of some of the cheaper guys, right, up top, just take guys that fit your script, but down low is where it gets a little bit more interesting. We're in a dome, so both kickers are always worth a little bit of attention there. In terms of pure punt plays, you've got Craig Reynolds, who's going to get a lot of touches for the Lions. If he could score a touchdown, which he's the bigger back between him and Gibbs, could easily get there at that kind of price tag, so I think he's kind of sneaky. They've got Khalif Raymond here at $2,800, gets quite a few snaps for the Lions, and of course, if Amon-Ra ends up getting rolled out, Khalif Raymond would be like a must-play at this kind of price tag. So a few guys down here that, due to injury, might be a little bit more intriguing on the slate than most, but Craig Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, even when the team is completely healthy, are still getting touches. So even if Amon-Ra plays, right, I'm still really going to like guys like Khalif Raymond tonight. He just has that snap floor. He's also a down the field type of wide receiver that can make things happen by himself. And when you're spending $2,800, right, and you're in a large field contest, we're looking for upside, right? We're looking for a player to go out there, turn in, a 5-yard catch into a 50-yard catch and get to the optimal lineup that way. If you're going to go cheaper than that, you do have guys like Hunter Renfrow, who's not a sexy pick, but he does get snap share and some playing time out there for the Raiders. You've got Austin Hooper, who is technically the number 1 tight end for the Raiders, but Michael Mayer has started to see a much higher snap share, has been much more effective than what you have with Hooper. So, he's more expensive now. He's starting to see even more snaps than what you see with Hooper. So Hooper, maybe the tight end 2 at this point, right? Maybe he's been demoted, but now he's only $800, right? So not the worst value play, but it's all said and done. And then if you're going to go to the complete minimum, 2 guys I think that you could play. You do have Brock Wright here at $200. He's the backup tight end for Detroit. Does play quite a bit because he's a better blocker than Sam Laporta. And then DeAndre Carter, also going to see quite a few snaps for the Raiders. He's a gadget wide receiver / running back. He's more of like a kick returner, punt returner sort of player. Kind of similar to like a Ray McCloud. Velus Jones out there for the Bears, you may have seen last night. He'll get some snaps, and a lot of those snaps that he's getting are going to be set up plays, right? Where it's maybe a screen, maybe it's a jet sweep that he's having set up for him. In Showdown, I much prefer these sort of players than even compared to like a Brock Wright. Like, I'd rather have the guy that we know is going to play around the same amount of snaps as like a Brock Wright, but DeAndre Carter is going to have plays set up for him, right? When he's out there, he's actually going to get the ball. And the difference between DeAndre Carter and Brock Wright in terms of big play upside, there's infinitely more upside for DeAndre Carter. So just, these sort of players down low, it's not exclusive to DeAndre Carter, right? You could use this for any sort of slate. I want the home run play kind of guys down low, right? The guys that can take, a 50, 60-yard touchdown out there, as opposed to guys that might get you 1-2 catches for like 20, 30 yards. All right, and now for some prop stuff. So a slip we want to go through together here. Of course, guys, all of my player poll, all that's posted on the Patreon, and all the prop exposure I'm getting to. But 2 props that kind of stuck out that I wanted to bring to you guys for free here are going to be the Michael Mayer over on receiving yards, and then the Sam Laporta over for receptions. So Laporta is at 4.5 on most books. There's a few books that do have him at 3.5 receptions. It's worth noting that all of them have him juiced like minus 170, minus 180 towards the over. And a lot of the books that have him at 4.5, he's juiced like minus 140, minus 150 towards the under. So I do think that 4 receptions is a pretty good projection, at least based on value out there, right, for Sam Laporta. But in a game potentially without Amon-Ra, right, we'll have to see if he ends up being active or not. But even if he is active, probably a little bit limited, right, because of that illness, Sam Laporta is going to see a little bit more of a snap share, right, a little bit more attention out there than he typically would. And to this point of the year, has covered or tied this line all but one time, right? So he's 6 for 7 pushing or hitting out there. He's got that potential little boost in terms of usage, and he's in a game environment against the Raiders that isn't ideal, right? It's not like it's a shootout against Kansas City, right? That's probably the perfect scenario for Laporta, but it's still a decent game environment, right? It's mid 40s with a total, right? They're still like a 7-point favorite, so expected to be a lot more effective on offense than the Raiders. Gotta love Sam Laporta there. So I like the push value at 4. Like I said, in terms of projection, I think 4 is a pretty good projection. But when you try to consider the over versus under equity, the over equity far outweighs the under equity. So definitely a prop that I thought was worth taking. And in fact, you'll see I'm taking it over there on Prize Picks as well. That's how much I like it. But the other prop for Underdog we'll take before we transition over there to the Prize Pick side is going to be Michael Myers over 22.5 receiving yards. Like I mentioned before, has started to become that tight end 1 for the Raiders. And in fact, over the last 3 weeks has been the number 2 wide receiver, right? Behind Davante Adams. You could say that maybe Jacoby Myers has been a little bit more effective than Michael Myers, but at the very worst has been the third most efficient wide receiver option on the team. Has seen quite a few targets, has actually been pretty good after the catch, and coming out of Notre Dame, people expected this from Meyer, right? He was very athletic, very good after the catch. Kind of reminds you of like a young George Kittle or Travis Kelce when it's, truthfully, I saw him play at Notre Dame a lot. I'm a little bit of a Notre Dame college fan. Was a bigger Notre Dame fan before I went to Pitt for college, right? That kind of washed that away. But still, I've seen my fair share of Notre Dame games. Went to the Notre Dame National Championship against Alabama. RIP. But Michael Meyer, right? He's underrated. A lot of people are expecting him to be one of those top 10, maybe top 15 fantasy tight ends. And at 22.5 receiving yards, if he's going to be that sort of player, and he might already be that sort of player, we'll have to see. If he goes out there, breaks out tonight, he has a case to be made that he's going to be one of those top 10 tight ends. This projection is ridiculous. And if you take a look at the odds on Draftkings, he's minus 130 towards the over. He's already at 24.5 yards on Prize Picks. And if you look at some of the other sharper books, like a Pinnacle, for example, he's minus 156 for the over. So this prop, in my opinion, is about like 5, maybe even 10 yards too low. And then the Laporta prop, like I said, brings a lot of push equity there, but also you could easily have him at 4.5 receptions. Like, I know some of the books have him juiced slightly under, but if Amon-Ra ends up getting rolled out, which is far from a guarantee, but it'd be sick if it happened, I mean, he's going to get bumped up to 4.5, maybe even 5 receptions. So you have that in your back pocket. Probably not going to happen, but if Amon-Ra did not play, that would be huge for him, and still a solid prop regardless. Speaking of that Laporta prop, I was going to go over here, record the Prize Pick slip for you guys. It literally just got bumped to 4.5 receptions. So the Prize Pick slip was going to be the over 4 for Sam Laporta. So I'd probably avoid that at this point, right? But I will show you guys this Daniel Carlson prop that I really like. So he's at 5.5 kicking points. He's at even money on DraftKings, which is not where the value is. But if you compare it to FanDuel, where he's about minus 130 for the over, if you look at Pinnacle, he's minus 160 towards the over. So for somebody like myself that is, sold on the Raiders, at least keeping this competitive tonight, an elite level kicker like Carlson in a dome has to be at least getting some of your attention out there. So Daniel Carlson is somebody that I was considering playing, but now that Laporta was bumped, right, I already have that slip in. I don't know if I'd want to give it to you guys here for the video. So wanted to point out the Carlson prop at least. Maybe you have a piece of exposure from the lines that you're getting to, but nothing, at least as of right now, that hasn't been bumped on my end. I took an under on Jared Goff passing yards, but that was at like 273. I took an over on Gibbs rushing yards. That was at like 62 yards. All of those were on like Friday, Saturday night. So they were, slips I got in a long time ago. Nothing I would rush to the table to go ahead and enter right now. So maybe you do have a Lions prop that you really like for tonight. Go ahead and match it up there with Daniel Carlson. But that's all I've got for today's preview. Hopefully you found this a little bit helpful and you're ready to go out there and have yourself a night. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way out of here. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so don't miss any of the content in the future. We'll have a Thursday night football preview coming out, main slate video as per usual out there. We didn't have a main slate video this weekend because your boy had really bad back spasms. I was working out, I had a little bit of a pull there in my left lat, and woke up on Saturday morning in the most intense pain of my entire life. So in the past, I think I've given some golfers shit for withdrawing with back spasms. That won't happen again. I totally get it. I could hardly move on Saturday, so I completely empathize with people that have that back pain. And honestly, it's not something until it happens that you can put into perspective, right? Back pain, it's like it hurts, like there's stuff that hurts out there. It's more the limited range of mobility that's annoying, like not being able to turn properly without feeling like there's a knife in your back. You guys get the point, right? So we will have the main slate content this week. That's the point of that whole rant that we went on there. So make sure you're subscribed so don't miss any of that when it drops. I appreciate the support here, guys. Go ahead, smash that like button for me, and let's go out there and have ourselves a night.